This is the Business Storytelling Podcast with Christoph Trapp, available on Google, Spotify, Apple, Pandora, and other podcast channels. Want to play it on your iPhone? Just ask Siri to play the Christoph Trapp Business Storytelling Podcast, also available on Alexa. Here's Christoph with today's episode.
Hey, storytelling. So number Chris, the live version we're branding the because why not? We're taking extend the book. I'm even sure there is chapters at this point, but we want to dive into different sections of the book and more from there. So today's section, we're actually going to what 130 podcast episodes, what you take from those learnings for your own live stream and move forward from there. Let's see if we can get Max on the show here. He's hanging out in our wonderful green room, and as you know, there's so many buttons to push that at some point it'll work here. We will see if we can get him there. There he is, unmuted.
Absolutely.
Max, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Christoph. Thank you so much for having me. You're the master of all the different buttons there, so it's always smooth and efficient with you.
Well, it doesn't feel smooth and efficient in my mind because, I mean, it is, as you said, there's all these buttons you have to push. But thanks to my friends over at switcherstudio.com, that's how we pull this off. That's how we do the show. Trap One gets you 1 month off, by the way. And of course, the forward is actually from Nick Mattingly, who is their CEO. But Max, thank you for joining me. Thanks for contributing to the book. Really awesome to see you read your content again as part of the bigger book. And your content, we actually start off with it. We talk about how CMI, the Content Marketing Institute, has seen an increase in live streaming. Stephanie Stahl was on the show not too long ago, and she confirmed that to me, and not surprised, quite frankly. And then you talk about the things you have learned. Many of them apply to live streaming. Fill us in. What have you learned? What works? What doesn't? What gives you a heart attack or heartburn? And let's go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots and lots of things I've learned. And thanks again for having me on, for featuring me in the book. It's really, really special. Always cool to partner with you. And I think I could talk for hours and hours and hours about the things I've learned from podcasting. I think one of the things that, we've both seen is when you have a podcast that is interview format, when you're interviewing a new guest every single week, it opens so many doors for you. And whether that's somebody that you've previously had a relationship with, that you've now kind of taken your business relationship to the next level, or it's somebody that it's your first time really interacting with them besides setting up the interview. And now that's a new, really great business contact you have. Who knows what they or someone in their network might, open a door for you. Who knows how you might end up working together. Who knows how you can end up helping them. And I think when you take it back to live streaming, podcasting is really cool in itself. It's, obviously it has an audio focus, but has really great video possibilities as well. And when you add a live streaming element, it just adds that next dimension. It's almost like a fourth dimension there, where you can interact with people live, where people can see how you are, how your guests are, and how tips and your expertise is from a really raw kind of off the top of your head level. And there's just a more genuine feel to it. So I think it's really, really neat, everything that you're doing in the live streaming space and the potential for live streaming podcasts, because you can still kind of take a similar approach that you would for a non-live podcast, and then actually repurpose the live podcast, the live interviews afterwards. So there's lots of potential as far as repurposing it goes. And it just really adds that like fourth dimension.
And what's interesting to me too is when you talk about the networking, let's dive into that a little bit deeper. So you can invite people on that you want to meet, right? That you want to connect with, that you want to do business with, and whatever. And I do that too. And even when Seth Godin was on the show, Max, I mean, fanboy moment right here. I mean, I didn't make any secrets at all. I'm like, oh my goodness, Seth Godin on my show, whatever. And he didn't seem to care, I guess. But But at the end of the day, it's not just about me networking with Seth or me getting Seth on the show. We still have to offer some value to the people watching and listening. So how do I find that balance to get people on the show that, I want to connect with as a business partner, client, whatever, but I also need to offer value to people listening, because if nobody listens, you might as well just meet for coffee.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a really delicate mix there. I think it's especially when you get somebody like Seth, or like I remember how excited I was when I got you on the Wild Business Growth podcast. And I think there's an excitement level when you get kind of like a big name guest, and you obviously want to talk about their background. But to your point, you want your listeners to go in, and viewers to walk away with real actionable insight and things that they can actually apply back to their business. So I think that's one of the fun parts of interviewing, as well as kind of leading a live stream, is keeping the conversation going in a natural level, which is, something that you're doing literally as we speak, but also making sure you have a really great mix of interesting and kind of funny, just enjoyable moments, but also some key insights that you're able to take away. And I think the best interviewers, the best podcasters, the best live streamers out there are really good at getting a really healthy mix of those two things.
Well, it can be a challenge, however, because, you have to kind of think about what your goals are and what you're trying to do. So you talk about when you interview people and how important listening is. And it's interesting to me, because I try to listen, but I also am producing a show, right? And in the book, I'm actually talking about, to make it easier on yourself, ask a team member to do all this. And I don't know if you've seen this before, Max, but I got this. This is what it looks like here, right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's all the things I'm doing. I'm watching over here. The Twitter stream didn't trigger. So the next time when you say something, keep talking. So I'm going to work on that while you're talking, but I'm still listening. I got a ring light in my eyes. My eyes are, oh my goodness. It's, I'm watching Amazon Live over here, see what's going on over there. So, but at the end of the day, so anyway, we'll talk about that in a different chapter, in a different episode, about how you should maybe consider having a producer to do all these buttons and monitoring and all those things. But when you do an interview, how do you what's the cadence? How do you listen? How do you know what to say next? I mean, like, I'm listening to you and I got like 12 questions, even while I'm only listening with one ear, right? How do you pick what to do next?
Yeah, and appreciate you kind of donating one of your ears for this interview. But I think the and I can't turn off the corny jokes, it just happens. But I think the key when you're looking at listening and you're approaching interviews as an interviewer, I think it all starts with the planning. And it's really helpful not to have a full script for the podcast planned out, for the episode planned out, but you need to at least have a brief outline. And this is something you can share with your guest as well. Or maybe you don't want to share because you want to surprise your guest, which is totally cool sometimes. But I think what's key is to have maybe just 4 or 5 bullet points on a notebook, piece of paper in front of you. So at least what are the main pillars of this conversation? What are the key segments that I want to get to throughout this interview? So that's key to keep in mind beforehand. And then doing the interview, whether you are interviewing or whether you are the guest, it's super helpful just to jot down some notes throughout the interview. And for example, you mentioned that you wanted to get my thoughts on listening as an interviewer. I literally just wrote down the word right now, listening, on my notepad. And just that word, one word, listening, created that spark and reminder in my mind. So when I knew it was time for me to talk, I can expand on listening and what's involved in interviewing tips. So it doesn't need to be like you write down sentences on sentences. Sometimes just jotting down those notes can really help. So there's the notes piece, there's kind of the planning piece up front, there's the notes piece during it. And as you were mentioning, you got thinking to me, it's really easy to fall into the trap, no pun intended, of, okay, what do I ask my guests next? Just kind of totally focusing on what's the next question that I ask my guests, as opposed to truly listening to their answer. But if you are able to kind of tell yourself to pause, take a deep breath, listen truly to what your guest is saying, then you'll be able to notice some keywords or some key points that your guest has made that more organically will trigger the next question for you to ask. And that creates a natural flowing interview. So it's kind of a mix there of making sure you are listening keenly to what your guest is saying, because that's what makes a smooth and magical interview.
It's true. And we are live on Twitter now. I had the wrong microphone turned on here for a second. I don't know what's going on with Twitter, but people are tuning in even though we were delayed. So guys, if and gals, of course, if you're listening there, let us know. We'll send you the link over on Amazon Live. You can watch the whole episode there as well. So I totally agree with you. I do the same thing. I have scratch paper now, and I just write things down even when I'm just listening with half an ear because I got technology problems.
Oh, no. We're reducing ears things, left and right.
I write things down, and then I kind of make a decision. What do I want to ask next? What do I want to talk about? What stories do I have to share? And that's actually one thing I think when you do a live stream as a brand, you're not a journalist. Let me say that again. You are not a journalist. And here's what I mean by that. I'm a journalist by training, but this is my show. I got stuff to say too, and I don't mean that negatively, but what I mean is I'm not just interviewing people, right? I want to share my own stories, whatever. So just something to keep in mind. I think in the book I make fun of that a couple of times. I say sometimes guests do the same thing. They're so intent on speaking the whole time, they don't let you tell your own story, and they think you're just there to ask questions. So just keep that in mind. You want to share your own experiences. You want to share your own stories and go from there. Max, how did we meet? Do you remember? Was it on social media? Did somebody make an introduction, or how did you run across me, or how did I run across you?
Yeah, I think it was definitely through social media. I mean, we've talked about this before, but I think you are an absolute machine when it comes to content marketing, and you're one of the best as far as blog content, as far as social media posts. And so I think I first discovered you on Twitter, and we have a lot of mutual friends, a lot of connections in the same circle, both interested in the content marketing space. I actually met and have a great relationship with the godfather of content marketing, Joe Polizzi. We're both from Cleveland, Ohio. I saw him speak, in college. Like, we go way back. So I knew that you guys were connected and partnered on some really cool things as well. So I think the first time I actually reached out to you as far as setting up an actual collaboration was to invite you on the Wild Business Growth podcast. And I think I reached out over Twitter. So it all started over social media. But obviously, had you not had the amazing background from a content marketing, from the authentic storyteller, from a storytelling standpoint, it wouldn't have piqued my interest of saying, hey, this Christoph guy is somebody that I should reach out to.
Okay, that's great to hear. Really appreciate that, Max. And it's been a fun partnership. And of course now, you even have content in the book, and also, and I have to say, my shirt is looking better than yours, in my opinion.
Oh, I think we're going to agree to disagree on that. But I think two peas in a pod here. These are I'm sure these are selling like hotcakes.
Well, yours is currently selling better than mine. But what's interesting, I want to share this quickly. Merch.amazon.com. It has grown so wonderfully, and you literally can just create T-shirts. Now you can create throw pillows. So there is actually, I got it in the bottom here on Amazon Live. You can buy a throw pillow with a going live slogan, the background, whatever. You can put it. You can use that. I just ordered one yesterday. I want to see how it turned out, but you can get that. What else? We have a tote bag. I don't know if that's published yet. But anyway, so where do we end? I don't know. Underwear. Maybe we don't need underwear for going live, but
you never. I mean, hey, there's a market for pretty much anything. So
there's a market for everything, but we are not showing you pictures if you wear the going live underwear.
I think our modeling contract stops at the T-shirt. I believe maybe the throw pillow as well.
Yeah, we'll see how the throw pillow looks. But that's Joe Polizzi, by the way, is also mentioned in the book, because what we're doing right now, even though Joe doesn't know this particular piece, but it's actually, he inspired this, because here's what he did. He wrote the book Will to Die, and he released it as a podcast. And I was talking to him about something else, and I said, "You did what?" And he said, "Yeah, why wouldn't I?" And he showed me what he did, and I was like, "Huh." I should release Content Performance Culture as a podcast. And I did. Had like 1,000 downloads, which I thought wasn't horrible. I mean, there's no new episodes. There's 24 episodes. That's it, right? There's nothing new. That's all there is. And so now I'm taking that idea to the next level. We have a podcast, but we also are live streaming. And basically what we're doing is we're not reading the chapters to you. You can read them yourself if you'd like to read them, but we're talking about the chapters.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea, and I know Joe had tons of success with The Will to Die, kind of taking that strategy as well. I think it's I think it's a no brainer for any author slash podcaster out there to offer a podcast for each new book you write as a supplement to it, because it's really cool. I mean, think of how many artists and musicians now are releasing podcasts where they talk about their music. Like, it just makes sense. It adds another level behind the curtain, another level behind the scenes there. And you can really dive even deeper into some of these topics discussed in the book. So I think it's awesome. And I think you're right as far as downloads go. Like, it's something that's very targeted. And obviously, you would think people that are going to listen to it are going to be people that are more likely to be interested in the book. It's a smaller sample size than just something you're putting out as a brand overall. So it's nothing to be too concerned about, like how many people you reach or how it does overall. Any way you slice it, it's, whether consciously or subconsciously, it's building brand awareness for the book, and it's driving people that way. And you've kind of taken it to the next level where even within this podcast, you can talk about, merchandising you have for the book launch. You can talk about other things you're doing for the book launch. So it's just really cool to see all the different angles that you can approach this. And it's not like the old days where it's just, launch a book and maybe there's a book tour. Like, there's a lot of different things you can do.
Well, plus forget about the book tours, because we're not going anywhere. We're
right. A virtual book tour.
I'm just sitting right here, and that's it. I did send out some PR pitches to all kinds of podcasts. Max, if you haven't gotten yours, consider this is it right here. Always happy to come on shows to talk about the new book. But honestly, I think, how can you write a book about going live and you don't have a live show? Like, that makes no sense.
Right. Yeah, you have to. I mean, you you owe it to yourself and to your audience to do so. So this is it is really cool to come full circle like this.
Yeah. So you talk about in your section at the beginning of the book, you talk about getting ahead of schedule, and I use Calendly, and I hold a couple hours, whatever days, and I send that to people, and I say, book, if you want to book it here, that'd be awesome. This booking was a little bit different. But that's what I do for the business storytelling podcast. And sometimes people get upset. Oh my goodness, there's nothing on there for like 6 weeks. And I'm like, yeah, I know, that's the next opening. How do you, what are your tips on for people to stay ahead, to have the guests lined up and not, have a heart attack every week? Yeah,
you definitely don't want that. I within the past, since I started Max podcasting, that's when I made a really, a serious switch to Calendly. Previously, I hadn't been using schedulers like that. But now I think once you switch to a scheduler like Calendly, you never go back, because you realize how amazing it is, how many steps it takes out in the process. It's just so efficient. So I like using, schedulers as well. I think the main thing, back to your heart attack comment, the main thing is, if you get ahead, a month to 6 weeks ahead, that's kind of what I view the sweet spot as far as, having interviews recorded, reaching out to guests. It massively reduces your stress level as a podcaster, as a live streamer. And anything you can do to lower your stress level is going to make you happier. It's going to make your process more efficient. And you're going to be able to just have, a better attitude and better quality. So, there's little things like that in the podcasting process that you can tweak and greatly reduce your stress. Kind of on the flip side, if you're at the point where you have, let's say you have a podcast episode every week, and every week you're trying to find a new guest last minute, it's just not fun. You're going to start dreading recording every new episode. You're going to start dreading reaching out to guests. So if you can get a month and a half or so ahead, it just greatly makes everything smoother. It reduces your stress level. And I think to your point on Calendly, if you start reaching out and you use something like that, where you have specific times set where you are, blocked your calendar out specifically for recording podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's how I do it. And then I set rules. I got like a couple hours open in a day. But then I say, when somebody books that day, no more bookings. So that's another nice feature that I love in Calendly. Do you ever get pushback from people? Every once in a while, somebody will say, well, I'm not your secretary or whatever. And I'm like, well, I'm, fine. Then don't come on the show. I'm just kidding. But depending who it is, but people ever push back, or you don't get that too often?
I've been before I Calendly was the guests who I was talking to that had already been using Calendly or something like that. The fact that I didn't have a scheduler like that, they were kind of thrown off like, oh, wait, we have to actually kind of organize this over emails back and forth. Now that I have it, I haven't seen much pushback like that. But what I have noticed, and I'm curious kind of how you go about this, but it's kind of funny depending on how your relationship is with the person, whether it kind of feels right to use a scheduling link or not. Like if it's somebody that you're super close to, or as a client, or somebody that's like a family or friend, sometimes it's kind of like, you know what, let's just call me whenever, like, let's handle this offline. It feels kind of funny sending a Calendly link, but sometimes, it's the most efficient way, and especially with people that you don't know as well. So it's kind of, there's a different dynamic there depending on kind of what your level of relationship is with the person you're talking to.
So what's interesting about that is saying to people, call me whenever, like never works, because then they call me and I'm doing a live stream or I'm in a meeting. Like it never works. Like it has to be scheduled. The other thing I also like is, and by the way, not even my wife calls me. She sends me a Facebook message or texts me. You know what I mean? So, but I also like the Calendly Chrome plugin. So you can do ad hoc meetings. So if I just had somebody earlier, they said, do you have 15 minutes this week? So I literally just find some time. I sent them 3 15-minute slots that are not even public, right? They're not listed anywhere. So I like that as well. The next thing you're talking about in the book, Max, and it's funny you talk about this to an extent because I just did this wrong yesterday. So you talk about your best podcasting voice. And here's what I did. So I recorded episode 1 of the Going Live podcast. And then I said, oh, shoot, I need like an opening. So my recording is just like this. I'm just sitting here talking, whatever. And then I'm recording the opening. And here's what I did. Welcome to the Going Live podcast. And I'm screaming into the mic. I played it back again. And I'm like, oh my God, what a rookie.
Well, you are certainly not a rookie, but I totally know what you're talking about. And I think even if somebody who's done hundreds of episodes, you still need to remind yourself, as you've just exhibited, you still need to remind yourself just to be natural, be your normal self. I think it's really easy when when the mic is on, whether you're just recording audio, and especially when video is on as well, to feel like you have to present yourself and you feel like you have to, project your voice and talk about these, do these things like you're giving a big presentation in front of a bunch of people in person. And in the podcast world and the live streaming world, that's just not the case. It's actually listeners and viewers resonate much better with your natural voice, with, your normal conversational tone, like you've had through, this whole interview, Christoph, except for your example. And I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of having what I call the announcer voice, when you're like, hey, welcome on, this week's episode. And it's like, and it's almost can be a newscaster voice sometimes. And what people, when they hear that, yes, it is attention grabbing, but it just doesn't resonate as well with people because it feels a little bit fake. It feels forced, and it's not your natural self. So whatever you can do to remind yourself at the start of any interview to take a deep breath, just remind yourself that you're having a conversation with this person, you're having a discussion and just talking normally. That's still going to come through really, really well. And that's actually going to come through better over the mic.
Don't go EA Sports. It's in the game.
It's in the game. Madden. Yeah. Shout out to my childhood with Madden there. Yeah.
But I mean, it is kind of hard, like, to really remember that, and especially as you're first getting used to it. I mean, I used to use AirPods or Apple AirPods all the time, and now I got the mic, and I mean, you don't need to scream at the thing at all. It hears you. Now, talk to me about when you first get started. My first few episodes were horrible. My first few live streams were heartburn. In fact, I didn't do as many live streams early on because I was like, this is just too much work. Oh my God, how many buttons do I have to push? Where do I look? Do I look there? Do I look here? Do I look there? No, there's no camera there, but there's all this stuff going on. And then also, and I played it off. I don't think you noticed, but then I'm talking, my 6-year-old comes over here and wants lunch. I mean, it's super stressful. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, go make your own mac and cheese. You know how to heat it up in the microwave. But my first few episodes were horrible. And you talk about, like, how do you deal with that the first few episodes, you're learning, right? You have to grow.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm actually craving mac and cheese now, so that's probably something you didn't expect coming out of that whole interaction. But I I'm totally with you. I think any way you slice, no matter how experienced you are, even if you're like an anchor on a news channel or something, podcasting is a different medium, and it takes a number of episodes to get comfortable. It also takes quite some time to get used to the sound of your own voice, which that's like literally something everybody on the planet deals with. So over time, especially if you edit your episodes or listen to your episodes, eventually, trust me, eventually you will get used to your own voice, because that's just how it is. But as far as kind of getting over the hump, I think back and legitimately, I think it was not till episode 30 or so that I kind of was in my natural tone and my natural voice. That announcer voice, that terrible podcasting voice, like legitimately the first 30 episodes. So I think you're at the tail end of that. So I apologize for your episode, Christoph. I think I was still a little forced with my voice there, but it took that long for me to for it to click and me just to be more comfortable on the mic. And the way so I've heard of people going back and re-recording those early episodes, but I'm a big believer that it's really cool to see a podcaster's evolution throughout the episodes over hundreds of episodes. And for me, like, no way I would go back and record that early stuff. And it's fun to go back on every now and it's cringeworthy. It's heartburn, as you said, but it is really cool to look back on those early episodes and see where you started and how much you've grown since then. And, that's kind of the story behind the story with any podcast or any live stream show. If you repurpose it, if you go back and look at that early stuff, it's really cool to see how much growth there is there. And also look back on, how you approach interviewing guests back then, how you approach now, what segments of your show did you change, or what approach did you change? For you, Christoph, you're going to be amazed, years from now, looking back on, wow, you know what? I handled my kid asking for mac and cheese for lunch very smoothly while an interview live stream is going on. So it's nothing to be ashamed of, those early episodes.
Very smoothly ignored. And what's interesting too is on the early episodes, I mean, the Business Storytelling Podcast has like 300 some episodes, like 330 episodes or whatever. And, nobody's going to go back and listen to the first 5. I mean, some people might, but it's not a serial release, right? Some people might, but, and every once in a while it pops up. But what I'm saying is, you have 330 episodes, and it's released in the whatever that's called, the newest on the top as opposed to the bottom. Mm-hmm. It's not that easy for people to go back and listen to them. I mean, it's not the majority of people, but I agree. I don't go back. And then what? Like, I have to update it. I guess I could do that in Anchor. So that's not a big problem. How about hearing from people? I mean, like, do you hear from a lot of people, or do we need to worry about that? I mean, people talk about engagement, conversation, blah, blah, blah. I mean, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, and this is something where live streaming obviously adds, a completely different element than traditional podcast recording. So I always say that in general, I think, you will hear from people on your podcast. You will hear from listeners. The way you slice it, you'll probably hear from far fewer people than you think. And that's totally normal. And think about it, like every podcast you listen to, host after you listen to it. No, people are busy. People have their lives. And a lot of times it takes something being really special or having like a personal connection with somebody for them to reach out and, tell you all the time, like, oh, great episode, great episode. And so a lot less people reach out than what you think. When people do reach out, that's definitely gold. Like, that feedback, whether it's, positive or constructive criticism, is gold for you as a podcaster as you're thinking about your show or your live stream. So take a little bit of time and ask them what they liked about the show or what they didn't like about the episode. Read feedback and kind of tweak stuff going down the line. Now, with live streaming, obviously, you have the ability on certain platforms to interact with people who actually, ask live questions or comments, things like that. So that adds a whole totally different ballpark, which I think is awesome because, what's cooler than interacting with people real time on, stuff that you had planned or, just parts of the conversation that have just evolved, came out of nowhere, came out of surprise. So that's a really, really cool element that is really magical about live streaming.
Yeah, what's interesting about comments, Max, is so on, if I, other than Facebook, which we're not streaming to currently, I have to go to all the networks, right, to actually see the comments. So I got Amazon Live on my phone. I also got it on that monitor. I got LinkedIn over here, Twitter, but I don't have Periscope up, so I don't know what people are saying on there. If you get a lot of comments during your shows, I would recommend using Restream, the live studio that they have. It's not, I don't know if that's what it's called, live studio or whatever. And you can actually get all the comments and you can reply to them, most of them, directly in the platform. So again, there's no right or wrong answer of what tools you use. Tools are not going to help you necessarily win anyways, if you don't have anything to talk about. But depending on what you're doing, use the right tool. Awesome. Max, it's so great to have you back on the show. It's so great to have you in the book. It's so awesome to see the mostly good looking t-shirt you have on.
Hey, I can't do anything about my colic. There's nothing I can do about that, but
what's interesting is, wasn't that amazing how easy the t-shirt production was on Amazon Merch? It's just unbelievable, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think it's so cool that you have, I think there's somewhere around 10 different colors you can choose from. They have all these different sizes available. It's amazing. And so thanks again for that. You turned it around so quick. And I've had people reaching out to me like, wait a second, there's seriously a t-shirt of you on Amazon? And so here we are. So you are unloading gifts left and right here.
And people are buying it. It looks like the Amazon live stream. I may have had a couple more clicks on my shirt. I don't know. I'm not paying 100% attention. Guys, this was episode 2 of the Going Live podcast. Please subscribe, rate, review, blah, blah, blah. On the next episode, we'll talk about how to get started, why replays matter, and how to actually get set up. Max, great to have you on the show. Thanks so much again for joining us.
Of course. Thank you so much, Christoph. Thank you for everything. This was great, and excited to tune in. Keep these going, but you're the king of live, so keep rocking it.
Put on my crown. Haha. Thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.